Christmas, everyone. So December 2018, and Eliza was born back in September. And I know my last video I did say that I would get back to you guys by the end of September to tell you a whole birth story, and it's not quite gone to plan like that. No reason other than just the case that life has just got in the way, really. There's been lots of things going on at home, and just obviously adapting to becoming a first-time mum. So, but what I'm going to do this week is a series of videos, because I do want to capture these videos to show you guys how Eliza's grown, because she has changed so much in 3 months. I mean, she's smiling now and she's at such a healthy weight. She was weighed about 2.5 weeks ago and she was £12.9. So she's doing amazing. And I want you all guys to all meet her, because she was a little ball last time you saw her. But today's video that I'm firstly posting is my birth story. I'm not going to try and ramble too long. I know I gave an overview when you met Eliza in the previous video. If you haven't watched any of my previous videos, please do look back. My name's Frankie. I'm a mum of a little 3-month-old daughter, Eliza, who was conceived through IVF, frozen fertility treatment. So if you have or are going through those sort of journeys, please do go back on my previous videos and follow my journey on how I've got to, fortunately and really very lucky, where we are today. So, but as I said, today's video I am going to be talking about how Eliza got here. So during my pregnancy, it was really tough, as you guys know. I had the cervical stitch put in at about 24 weeks pregnant. I was on pelvic rest right through to about 32 weeks pregnant, and I started commuting back to the city, and I was probably doing half and half. So 3 days a week I would commute from Kent on a train over across to Aldgate, where I work, and then 2 days I'd be at home and I would work with the laptop on my lap in bed, still continuing that little bit of pelvic rest, but also just being able to go out and socialise with people again, as in talking to people and having lunch with friends and showing my baby bump off. Because I know it sounds ridiculous, but you know, when you've been through that IVF journey, you want the whole world to know that you're pregnant, even though you're terrified the whole time. So I went back to work at 32 weeks pregnant, and at 34 weeks pregnant, approaching 35, is that right? Or was that 30? No, I think I was at, no, sorry, take that back. I was 33 weeks pregnant and I was approaching 34 weeks, and it was a Wednesday. I'd gone into work and I'd had quite a hormonal day. I'd been speaking to one of my bosses about some work and got quite tearful about it. And it was very out of the blue, and we just put it down to me being really exhausted for the day. I'd been in work Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, so it was my 3rd day of the week continuously commuting. And my boss did say to me, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he said, it's time to probably head off to the train station, just go home, put your feet up. So I did. So left the office, got on a train. Was a packed train that day, and if any of you are London commuters, you'll know that half the time you never get a seat. And even at that time of day, I was on a packed train, and I was 8 months pregnant with a massive, huge bump. I must get some picture shots actually to show you guys. I've looked back recently and I can't believe how big my bump actually was. And I had to stand on the train for 30 minutes. Got off at my station, which is close to Beckenham, and drove home. Felt a little bit tired. My bump felt low, achy pains, but nothing too out of the ordinary, should we say. Got home, pulled up, went onto my doorstep and stepped onto the first step and felt a trickle. this doesn't feel right. And if any of you are experiencing being further along in your pregnancies, you'll know generally towards that time your sort of bladder feels extremely full all the time. But I knew this was definitely not a case of me wetting myself, and I thought, something's happening. Stepped onto the next step and it happened again. The gush, I was like, this isn't right. So fortunately Jake had just got home as well, because he has a shorter commute than I do. And I said to him, I don't feel well, I've got water leaking, I think we need to go to the hospital. And we went to the hospital. He did not believe me the whole time. He thought it was a false alarm. We were in for a really long wait that evening. So we probably ended up, the hospital I think told us to get there about 8 p.m. We had to sit in this crowded corridor waiting area. Finally got seen about 11 o'clock at night and explained to the midwife that I believed my waters were breaking, especially because I'd been to the toilet a few times whilst waiting in the hospital. And every time I moved, I was just trickling water. So she said, it does sound like your waters have ruptured. They were very concerned at the time because also my stitch was still in me. So they said to me, we're going to do this test. And they did almost like a swab inside me, and it gave a positive test result, a bit like a pregnancy test, to say that that was actually the amniotic fluids leaking and that baby was on its way. So their main concern at that point actually was nothing to do with the labour, was actually to control everything, to make sure that I didn't start contracting and rip the stitch that was holding my cervix closed. So this was about 2 a.m. In the morning on the Thursday at that point. And the doctor came in and saw me and she said, right, we've booked you in for 6 a.m. surgery. We're going to have the stitch removed. They'd had a look at the stitch, very similar to how they would check a smear. So they opened me up with a clamp, had a look inside, and she said that it was quite a tight stitch still. So they were going to do the stitch removal very similar to how they had put the stitch in me, which was through a spinal block and removing the stitch. So they sent Jake home for a few hours. They said, go home, rest. And Jake was fantastic. He said, look, I'm going to be there for you by 6 in the morning. And I've got to be honest, at that point, I was absolutely terrified. I instantly felt homesick. I was moved on to maternity ward. So I had hundreds, well, I say hundreds, it felt like hundreds of babies crying. Everyone seemed to be happy. And you saw a lot of new mums with their husbands there that night because it was the first night the baby had been born. And for myself, I just thought, my baby isn't due for another 6 weeks. I've got this stitch in me, my waters have broke, and the one person who I need by my side holding my hand has been sent home. And I've said this to my friend who also had a baby similar timing to myself, and she agreed that when you first have that feeling when your waters break, because the same thing happened with her and her partner, he got sent home and she was told to go, because she wasn't dilating, he got told to go home, rest and come back in the morning. But actually that's the most vital time. You want your partner there. And I felt so vulnerable, and I just remember laying on that bed, and I know it sounds selfish in hindsight, but I just wanted Jake next to me just to tell me I was going to be okay. And the anxiety hits the roof because you think, I'm going to be having a baby soon, and it's just a massive change in your life. And it was hard for me. So the following day we had the stitch removed, and all went well during the surgery. And whilst they were removing the stitch, they did say that I instantly dilated at 1 centimetre. So at that point I was in early labour. So rather than being sent home after the stitch was removed, they said, we're going to keep you in labour ward and induce you, because baby will need a bit of help because she's 6 weeks early. So they did put a hormone drip into my arm, and at the same time my midwife requested an epidural to be given to me, because she said to be on a hormone drip at 1 centimetre dilated, you're going to be absolutely exhausted with agony. And yeah, I never really got asked. They just said, would I consent to an epidural, and that was it. So the anaesthetist came in. I was still only 1 centimetre dilated. It was the same anaesthetist that had been there for my spinal block during the stitch being removed. And he said, right, epidural on. If I'm being honest, the epidural was very uncomfortable. But that was probably the most uncomfortable out of the whole labour experience I had. And what they did is just told me to sort of lean forward, sit forward, and they just put a needle up through your spine, and it felt very heavy, like a huge weight on my back. And they injected through the anaesthetic, and then I had a buzzer that I could buzz every time, and the epidural would run through into me, and I couldn't feel a thing, to be honest, initially. The most painful bit, I would say, during having epidural and during labour is definitely when they're checking how dilated you are. That is quite uncomfortable, but manageable. So I went through, that happened on the Thursday. I was said by midday, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I went through all the way through to Friday evening, at about 8 o'clock in the evening, when they said to me that Eliza was stuck at 7 centimetres. So I was still determined to have a natural birth at that point. And they said to me, you know, you're exhausted. My sister was there, Jake was there, and they said, it's just getting too much now for baby. But what we do is give you 4 more hours, and if baby doesn't move, then we will have to get you in for caesarean. So we got to that point, and midnight came, and they said, no, baby's not moved. There's been no change for 8 hours. She's tired, you're tired, and we've just got to get this baby out. So because I had the epidural already in my spine, they took me immediately. So when they do say emergency caesarean, you do think you've got a little bit of time to get your head around it. Not at all. They literally crash you down onto the bed, and you are wheeled straight through to theatre there and then. Your husband's chucked a pair of scrubs and told to join you in theatre. So off we went into theatre, and they began the procedure. And yeah, it was uncomfortable, but I felt very sick during the caesarean, which I never thought I would experience, but I felt really queasy through it all. And because I have adhesions as well, which is hence part of the reason I have the IVF treatment to conceive, it was very sore for me. And to say it's a painless procedure, I would have to disagree. That was the worst of it all. But I was really surprised that once I was in theatre and they started operating, within 2 or 3 minutes she had been born. And it was the most amazing thing. They held her up over the sheet and said, it's baby girl, and they all knew I was going to call her Eliza. I'd said that as we were going to theatre. So they all wished Eliza happy birthday, and they called Jake over and said, Daddy, would you cut the cord? And £5.8, I just couldn't believe it, for 6 weeks early. I was just, the most magical feeling, it really was. And yeah, my birth, I would have said, wasn't how I planned. And this is part of the reason I'm doing this video, is it just, for me, I never even considered having a caesarean, and yet, you know, it was matters were taken out of my hand. I've had other friends as well recently who also planned their natural type births with no pain relief. They were doing hypnobirthing, and they've ended up going on to have a caesarean. And then I've had another friend who wanted every drug possible, and yet she had the quickest birth out of us all. She had no time for anything other than gas and air, and baby was here, and not a stitch in sight or anything. So it's the most unpredictable thing, and we all end up with the end result, which is a beautiful baby in our arms. It was a long day, like long 3 days to be honest, and she was born at 1:11 on Saturday the 8th of September, and it was the best morning of my life. I still am in awe now that she's here. So anyway guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. I will be doing other videos throughout the week, so keep an eye on it. I'm going to do such things as development of a baby between 0 to 3 months. I'm going to go through and tell you guys how Eliza's gained weight, and also I'm going to do a video on her in special care, just to give a few guys some insight. We have got some pictures of her in the incubator, so we'll try and attach those to the special care videos when I load them. But yeah, if you do enjoy these videos, please give it a big thumbs up. Please, yeah, like my videos, send me some comments, and subscribe to my channel. And I promise guys, from now on, now I've got my routine set with Eliza, I'll be sure to be adding more videos, definitely a lot more regular from now on. Anyway, thanks guys, and Merry Christmas, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Take care, bye.